What's going on, folks? Welcome to the bar. I'm opening up shop today to talk about My Hero Academia Vigilantes Chapter 86. Now remember, that means spoilers are ahead, but 86 moves away from Koichi for a bit and finally gives us a little taste of what we've been missing, some Knuckleduster. So, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button, that way we can keep the lights on here at the bar. And also, if you're catching this during the premiere, be sure to head over to the live stream on Twitch after the video, that way, if you want to hang out, we can chill. I'll be sure to put the link in the description down below. And if you're just watching, fill up your cup. It's time to talk some Vigilantes. Okay, so real quick, before we get started, there's one last thing to mention though. We are in the final week of the fan art Quirk contest. If this is the first that you're hearing of it, the rules are simple. Take my mascot here and create your own rendition of it. But also, flex that creative muscle of yours and create a Quirk alongside your amazing fan art. So make sure to get your submissions in by September 30th to be one of 3 that can choose from Marvel's Avengers, Ghost of Tsushima, or NBA 2K21. Send your submissions in to ExclaimsMedia@gmail.com. Shoot your shot, folks, you never know. Anywho, enough jibber jabber from me, on to the chapter. Alright, so Chapter 86 starts with Detective Tanuma and Officer Sanza retrieving some old information regarding a past event and looking into the hospital that Popstep is being kept at. Sanza was able to uncover some information about the hospital where Pop is being treated, and it turns out that 2 years prior to the new wing's construction, a generous donation was made to that hospital by a man who goes by Takeshi Kuroiwa. I butchered that name, I know, but Sanza goes on to say that that benefactor is an extremely private person, but seems to hold several positions at several companies and nonprofits. We then see the reason why Tanuma's ears perk up. It's because Takeshi Kuroiwa is the cover used by Knuckleduster. Tanuma then opens up the information that Sanza managed to rustle together. You see, Tanuma thinks that there's clues from this case to one that happened 7 years ago at a masked fighting tournament. We then move to a flashback for the remainder of the chapter. It starts with 2 people named Drunk Lee and Master Beast duking it out in an underground arena. We see that this place is pretty much a safe haven fighting ground for anybody willing to wear a mask. Essentially, anybody can fight here anonymously. And pretty much, you fight until the other person is incapacitated, but in this case, they both suck and they both get incapacitated. Yeah, the fighting arena is pretty much disregarded by everyone. The average Joe knows about this place because it sits in a parking deck that's pretty much just untouched by law. That's when we see that the people talking about this lawless place is Tanuma and O'Clock. O'Clock ironically turns down Tanuma's cigarette and explains to the detective that the reasoning behind him calling together the police wasn't just to break up this illegal fighting ring. The reason why he called everybody together was to further investigate a quirk-enhancing substance that people have been using lately. And after he does what he needs to do, he needs the police to kind of, act as like a buffer for a raid or whatever to help him get out. O'Clock then looks at him and goes, "You got any more questions?" And Tanuma goes, "Yeah, what's with the 5 o'clock shadow?" And he smiles and takes off, saying he has to look the part. And we move to the next page where we see a very familiar sight, and this technically could be the debut of the infamous Knuckleduster outfit, but for today, he's donning the name The Ripper. But on the opposite side of the ring, an unstoppable locomotive of a human being with 20 wins and 0 losses is the pre-Shihasaikai Bullet, Precept of Death, whatever you want to refer to him as, Rappa. Yes, Kendo Rappa, aka here, the Rapper. And I love Rappa because he gets meta and goes, how is nobody going to point this out? Is anyone not going to point this out, that the Ripper and Rapper are fighting each other? And he looks at the guy and goes, you're really going to fight with a knife? That's just kind of stupid. You don't even get to have a real kind of fight in that sense when you fight with a knife. You get 1 or 2 good shots, and then if you do, you hit a fatal organ, you kill somebody. What's the point in that? If you're supposed to fight, you got to fight like a real man. You got to throw the hands. And Knuckleduster, on the other hand, tries to spin it and says, look, I'm not fighting with a Quirk, and you're fighting with a Quirk, so this knife could be the way that I beat you and level the playing field. But Rappa just sees it as a convenient excuse and just kind of throws it back in his face. Knuckleduster asks him if he's scared to fight a liar like him, and Rappa says, nah, come at me, dude. And the gong rings, and Rappa begins beating the piss out of Knuckleduster. The onslaught of punches causes Knuckleduster's Ripper mask to come flying off, revealing a grizzled man with a bandana over his forehead and almost his eyes. Knuckleduster stands up and he looks at Rappa and smiles after not giving up after his onslaught. He states that he's a nice guy, so you know what, he's gonna play by his rules. So we know how Rappa is by now. If you can take his punches, stand up, and then ask for more, you're gonna get his respect. And the chapter ends with Rappa cocking back his fist and loading it to fire at Knuckleduster. Okay, so first things first, I'm going straight for the beer. I was saying that we needed more backstory and development before the climax, and we got just that. This chapter was so unique in its own way because it just filled so many holes without revealing too much. Like, it introduced a slew of new characters that kind of already existed, but those new characters have ties. I mean, this whole chapter, in my opinion, is just leading to that whole Rappa reveal. I don't know how much of a poignant role he'll play in this, but seeing him lets us know that this underground fighting ring that he's fighting in, it's definitely tied to others, but mostly it's tied to Trigger, the Shiosaikai, and mostly All For One. But before I fall down that Rappa rabbit hole, there's one thing I gotta point out, this small panel in the beginning right here. Tsukauchi is at the hospital being confronted by the Vigilantes. I told you one of the Tsukauchis was going to confront the boys, so there you go, now Masa it is. We're definitely going to get that moment as a chapter probably, but for now we got to go back to this week's chapter because even though it was a flashback, it is great to see Knuckleduster again. So, Rappa being involved means several things, but for now, the only options that I see for this plan would be that either mid-fight, the battle gets broken up by the police, and this lets Knuckleduster escape Rappa and do his thing. But the thing is, he'd be under a time limit at that point. So the minute that the cops show up, any sign of the drug is gone. Or, 2, Knuckleduster loses, gets inside of that makeshift medical wing that they said they have, he sneaks around the facility, finds the drug, finds the information, maybe gets caught, the police start the raid, and then he gets his way out. I mean, we know that the first person Rappa loses to is Overhaul, so this underground fighting facility is probably continuing to exist after the raid, albeit in different locations. This just makes me think though, who knows if Rappa and Hood are a part of the same chain of underground fight clubs? When I read this chapter, I gave serious thought as to why Knuckleduster disappeared from the story. The circle that I kept drawing was a theory that I seemed outlandish, but also not out of the realm of possibility. I personally think that Knuckleduster disappeared because he's back to tracking down All For One. I mean, when you think about it, he probably does have a little bit more to lose now that he has his daughter back, but the thing that I would argue is that Koichi really reignited Knuckleduster's heroic spirit. Like, everybody knows that it's a hero's job to risk their life, and only the wisest of the wise know that at any moment they could lose their life. That's the dice that they roll when they take the position as a hero though. This was Knuckleduster's final mission. Quirk or not, he dropped this case and now he's gonna pick it back up and follow it through to the end. Now, as for the next chapter, I don't know if we can assume that this moment is where Knuckleduster gets the information as to where All For One is, or provide us with the consensus to investigate a suspicious property not knowing what they would stumble across. It's pretty obvious at this point that All For One created Trigger and funneled it through the fighting rings. The fighters were all For One's guinea pigs for Trigger, in addition to finding the perfect Nomu test subjects. I mean, I could totally see at certain points All For One just yanking these nobodies, Nomuifying them, and nobody ever hearing from any of them again. But this scene, this moment, this chapter, it's a flashback that's happening 7 years ago, so we're traveling back further in the My Hero Academia universe. I'm being rather skeptical about this being so close to the All For One confrontation. 7 years ago from when Vigilantes is taking place, this incident could precede the fight, like the fight, which makes me think that Tanuma feels like the stakes could be reaching this level once again in the current times, which they were. I mean, All For One and All Might fought one more time. So yeah, that's definitely something to think about. I'm gonna be doing a follow-up video, don't you guys worry about that, and we'll be talking about whether or not we think that drunk Lee was Deku's dad. But other than that, be sure to get those submissions in and stay tuned for the follow-up video later this week. And this is Dan, signing off. Cheers.